Hi, everyone. I'm Shaheen from The Content Mix, and I'm excited to be here with Alaric Moras, Global Social Media Strategist at Dassault Systèmes, a software company based in France. Thanks so much for joining us, Alaric.
Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, so you're joining us from Paris, is that right?
I am indeed, yes.
Yeah. So maybe you can explain a bit in your own words, a bit about yourself and what you do and your company as well, whose name I'm sure I didn't pronounce correctly.
Sure thing. You almost got it right. You were very close. We're called Dassault Systèmes. And to tell you a little bit about myself, my name is, as you rightly pointed out, Alaric Moras. I am Indian by nationality. I grew up in Abu Dhabi, though, and I was there for about 15 years. And then I moved to Mumbai, where I studied English literature for 5 years. And now I've been in Paris for about 4 years. I started off by doing my master's in international affairs and development after a degree in English literature, and then I moved on to international communications role in an agency where I worked on projects like the Paris Peace Forum by the French President Emmanuel Macron, the current sitting president. I then moved on to one of the agency's clients, Dassault Systèmes, which is my current role and where I've been since June 2019. So that's all about me.
Yeah, awesome. So what was it that attracted you to marketing as a career in social media in particular?
I think that social media marketing and social media communications are two things that are incredibly dynamic and can be incredibly stressful. But I like that because it's very much something that requires you to be very responsive to how, say, algorithms change. Many people don't know this, but LinkedIn changes their algorithm sometimes once every 2 weeks with almost no warning, even though we are in close contact with LinkedIn's teams as one of the largest companies, it's one of the largest software companies in the world and one of the largest companies in the world. It's not just LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is just one of the social media platforms we manage. And I think also what attracted me is that a lot of people think that social media is community management, but community management is just one part of what social media is. So it's an incredibly stimulating job. And more, especially as we're talking about COVID, it takes so much space. Your digital content takes so much space. So you have a word, you have a finger in every pie. Basically, you have the right to talk about things that normally you think that social media managers don't necessarily get involved in, such as larger level corporate and communication strategy. So I find that I'm able to do a bunch of different things in sometimes very stressful environments, and I thoroughly enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, how do you think the role of the social media manager has evolved? You started to touch on that, but I definitely agree it's become much more of a strategic position in any company, I think.
Yes. I think that in the beginning, people thought of social media, and many people still do, which is part of the problem and part of the work that I do every day to get people within the company to realize that this is not actually what our job is about. I think a lot of people often think that social media is an outward channel. You put stuff out, you're always shouting out, and it's always about me, myself, and I, and it's always like, we're doing this as a company, la da da, and with the rise of influencer culture, that also impacts how people view social media. But when you're doing social media for a company, you are actually performing a role that requires you on a daily basis to work with really important stakeholders within the company, executives, the crisis communications teams, the director of communications at your company, because you are the first rampart. When something happens in the company, they are tagged on social media consistently. Your media alerts jump, and then you've got social media flying, like social media tags and comments, etc., flying off the charts. So you need to be very, very sturdy in what you do. You need to be strong in knowing what lines of communication you got to take and what you don't have to take. And it's not just you shouting out about what you want to talk about. It's you engaging with conversations that involve your brand, that require your brand to be present. It's knowing what to say when, and knowing also every time you say something, how the tables can turn and how there could be backlash. So it's a lot of thought behind it, actually.
Yeah. So how do you know what to say when? It sounds like it requires a lot of coordination with other members of your team, I imagine.
Yes, I would say that large organizations and many companies in general, even small ones, are not really agile when it comes to this. I think that it's a real uphill battle when you come into work every day and you say, guess what? We're here to make sure that your objectives are met and that we defend this company to the hilt. But at the same time, we know what to talk about and we know what not to talk about. And we have data to prove it. And that's what's important, I think. And I know you're going to come to the Shane in due time. But I think that data is critical. You cannot convince your stakeholders if you aren't coming with facts. If you're not coming to the table with facts, you're not going to be heard. You're not going to be given a seat at the table. So I think that's incredibly important.
Yeah, actually, let's go to it now. I mean, this is a question that comes up a lot. Like, what should people really be looking at? Which metrics are the most important for social media?
So I think that there's always a focus on impressions, but impressions are really impressions are just when people scroll through or scroll past a post, and so they've seen it on their feed, it's appeared one way or the other, but it doesn't necessarily indicate engagement or like, comment, or share. And I think engagement is really fascinating to follow. You've got numerous levels of engagement, and your liking is the simplest thing that you're gonna do, right? On Twitter, you've got your retweeting, which is the second level. On Twitter, you also have a third level, which is you retweet, you quote, so you comment there. And then there's on Twitter again, you'll have a third or fourth level, which would be like they comment on the original post. So on LinkedIn, if you take out the third level, LinkedIn, Facebook, and all other social media sites, YouTube included, if you take out the third Twitter level that I mentioned, which is the retweeting bit, because it's not necessarily the same. It's much the same levels of engagement, and your comments are massive engagement. People often say, and in social media, this is such a dangerous trajectory to take, wherein you're just like, someone has commented, let's let it be. Let's let's just let's just let it pass. No. If someone has commented, it means that this person is engaged with you and your brand, whether negatively or positively, but it is an engagement and you are meant to respond to that engagement. So I think a larger point that I'm trying to make here for anyone who produces content is that don't ignore people who want to engage with your content. Yes, you have trolls, have the knowledge of how to weed them out and know whom not to listen to. But for the majority of cases, even trolls have something to teach you, even if you're not going to respond or you're just going to delete what they have to say. Know what the message they're trying to put across is. And I think that is so important. Listen for feedback. And that's not something that everyone does, I think.
Mm-hmm. That actually reminds me of a point. Like, I think that a lot of people face is like, is it ever okay to delete a comment?
I would say that there are individuals sometimes, depending on the size of your company and the nature of the job that you do, who are even paid to actually undermine the company and their interests. So at some point, you need to know who these stakeholders are. Again, when you look at the data and you look at, for example, you have a Twitter account with 0 followers, 0 following, and about 15 comments on different accounts and undermining all of them. You know that this is either a bot or this is someone paid to do it. So again, you need to look into the data. You can't just make a decision because you don't like what you see. You need to make a decision based on fact, based on study.
Yeah, definitely. And I've definitely seen like the debate come up on like, it's like clearly spam and it's like, but we can't delete it. It's like, I think within reason you can.
Yeah.
You don't have to respond to like every single thing everyone ever writes on your page. But of course, when it's like a legit client and if they're complaining, that's not okay to delete.
There you go.
It's better, right, to come with a eloquent response. Yeah, and engage, like you said. Yeah, it's a chance to kind of, I don't know.
Yes.
Actually, you can make yourself look better in the end.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, could you tell us a bit about what your company does and your day-to-day and your role, like what it's like?
Sure. So what we do at Dassault Systèmes is that we have what we call the 3D experience platform, which is a one-stop solution for large companies to imagine virtual worlds and virtual universes. What this means necessarily is that if you're an architectural firm or you're an engineering firm or what have you, you can be any sort of firm. If you want to streamline processes, if you want to manage your data, you come to us and we tell you how you can get to do that. And we provide you with access to our platform to do and imagine any of this. Our clients are across the world. We are very present in the automobile industry, marine and offshore, life sciences, especially. So that's essentially what we do. My day-to-day is generally me coming into work, me sitting down with my editorial calendar, because I write out the posts for all of our social media, and I also post this content out. Look at what needs filling, look at blank spaces in the editorial calendar, receive inbound messages from people across the company saying, hey, we want to post this on social media, we want to do this way, and me telling them, great. I understand. Either we say yes or no. No, because this won't work on social media, we believe, and for this X, Y, and Z reasons. Or yes, but we think that the message should be tweaked, and we think that we can use this format instead. And so that's some part of my work. Another part of the work is working with various agencies, event companies, to make sure that social media promotion is streamlined, that if we have online events, that the live stream is in fine order. Working with agencies as well to make sure that we produce content. So we have a sort of content, an agency that works as a content factory for us. So that's what we ensure with them. I also manage the person who does community management, which is one part of my job. And I oversee his work and make sure that he's responding to inbound messages about anything and everything, and how he's engaging, and what is the general sentiment and tone, and what is the temperature like with inbound messaging coming in. So that's generally what my days look like. A lot of meetings also.
Yeah. So sounds very multifaceted.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it sounds like it. But how many different markets are you guys operating in?
We're present. We have offices in more than 40 countries, but that doesn't represent our markets because we're really across the board,
all over the world, right? So, because I know, I'm asking because I'm just curious how that impacts your social media strategy, because I think there's always this debate of like whether you need to have different pages for different markets, and I don't know, curious how you or if you keep more things more global. Yeah.
So the approach that we've taken as a team is that though we are the global corporate social media team, we give our various offices independence in how they create content, as long as they follow certain levels of guidelines, which is to say that your images need to follow our branding. Your images shouldn't be, say, for example, pixelated, etc. Your messaging should toe this or this line, and because they're obviously posting in German, Spanish, French, Italian, what have you, Japanese, and so we aren't able, of course, to. It makes no sense also for us to kind of micromanage that, and we believe that kind of chokes them as well. So we let them post whatever they like, as long as the content respects certain guidelines. So that's how we manage our relationship with our various offices across the world.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've definitely seen like very different approaches to this, and I think it's something that a lot of companies are still figuring out. But it also depends a lot on your particular your strategy, your market, your audience, and how you need to engage with them. And sounds like in your case, it's important to have that like local presence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool. So, I wanted to ask if you could share any examples of like cool content that you've done recently or at any point in your career, anything you'd like to highlight in terms of that was maybe especially innovative or creative.
So I'll take two different tracks of this. One was something that I did at Auditoire, which is the event communications firm I talked about, where I had actually done my internship and then joined as a member of the team for about a year. I was project head for the Paris Peace Forum, which was essentially initiated by the French president to celebrate the 100 years since the armistice. From World War One, and it was amazing because I was walking around and Angela Merkel just passes me by, and it's like, okay, like literally heads of state. I walk down a corridor and like bump into Justin Trudeau, and there's no security anywhere, and he's like, sorry, and I'm like I don't know how to respond. I was terrified, but it's like, am I going to go to jail now? Like, how does this, what happens when you accidentally bump into a head of state? But that was an amazing experience for me because I was very young when that happened. I was 23. And I was producing live content, which means live tweeting and making sure that our photographers and videographers were producing content. I was putting that up nonstop on all of our social media feeds, millions of thousands of people connecting from across the globe, working with the president's team to make sure it happens. The UN Secretary General was Antonio Guterres was obviously present as well. That was a brilliant experience for me because I also studied international affairs and relations. So that was just very stimulating. And to do something like that at my age, knowing full well that, say, for example, I'm not necessarily French, but doing this for a French company, managing things was a pleasure. Another fun thing that I've been working on more recently is we're working on more pedagogic formats. And I think that is worth talking about because I always try as a content creator to put myself in the shoes of our audience, which is not necessarily always easy because, for example, we work with engineers a lot. They are a large part of our audience and our target audience. And we're trying to diversify and make sure people understand what our company does at a larger level. In French, we call this grand public, so this means general public audience. And this is not necessarily easy because you have to especially when you work in social media, you have to balance out with what you already have versus what you want to achieve. And you have to make sure that both sides are kind of happy. So what we're doing is like a series of videos that explains essentially what we do and how we do it in various fields. It could be about how we're present for electric vehicles, how simulation makes sure that your electric vehicles are the best that you can have. Talking about how COVID can be stopped from being transmitted in, say, classrooms. I'm thinking of people, very passionate individuals who used our software to recreate Da Vinci's models, some of which aren't actually models that would ever be functional because of laws of physics that were developed and understood after his time. But these models are still something that our people who are passionate about architecture and engineering made and created, and were things that we talked about in. I can link you to those videos. They're really lovely. They're a pleasure to watch. And they make sure that our audience understands that we aren't just this company that does a certain thing. So
yeah, very cool. Like, definitely we'd love to see the links, and I can share them with the Content Mix community. It's always great to see like inspiration from other content marketers. I wanted to ask, actually, I should have asked you at the beginning, but like how you ended up in France, because actually, a lot of our audience are international people looking to build their careers in marketing in Europe. So that's super relevant, how you got your foot in the door in France.
So I think it was via my because I come from a school that is also the school that the French president attended. So it's a high pedigree university, and some countries like France are very keen on things like pedigree, especially in terms of schooling. So that was something. And then it was via my internship that they wanted to hold me, keep me on as more of a. I joined the team more as a freelancer, but I was present 20 days out of 21 working days. So freelance, or kind of more like a full-time freelancer, you would say, an entrepreneur, if you will. Yeah. And so that was it. And then eventually I did move into a full-time contract here at Dassault Systèmes. So you can see it wasn't easy, I would say, but it is possible.
Yeah, cool. I guess agencies are maybe a good place to get a foot in the door because obviously they're the ones like producing, and they need a lot of language help, I guess. People who have skills in other languages. That's an opportunity for international people. So I'll move to the recommendations part of the interview. Sure. So could you share with us any source of inspiration?
Sure. So if we're going to talk about people, I talk about Rokhaya Diallo a lot. She is a French journalist who also has a very strong social media presence. She's a very loud and proud feminist, and she's also worked in documentaries, etc. So she's known for being very verbal about racial issues, which is a very complicated topic to talk about in France because it's just not the same context and history as America. with the same issues but not the same context. So the way people discuss it is very, very particular. And her way of handling content in social media and her production of content is also something that I really appreciate. So that's one source of inspiration. Yes.
Yeah, great recommendation. Definitely check it out. And then, do you have a book you would recommend?
So this book is it's called Daring Greatly by Brene Brown, and it's a book that's completely changed the way I approach not just my life but also the world of work. I think that when you work in our profession, which is content management, what often happens with content management and creation, what often happens is that people come to you and say, hey, so we want this to happen. And we want you to do this. And you need to develop this. And some part of our job is that. But some part of our job is also to say, I don't think this would actually work. And those are hard conversations to have. And this book taught me how to have those hard conversations, how to say, guess what? This isn't personal. This isn't about you. And we want to work with you to make sure that your message comes out there, but maybe not in this way. Maybe there's a different way to do it. And this is not always easy, but it does require strong leaps of vulnerability, especially when people come with their own agendas and have a very closed mind how they want to do things. You have to open their minds up, and that's not necessarily the easiest thing to do, but this book was definitely something that taught me to do it.
Yeah, very cool. And then your favorite software or app?
So Sprinkler is our go-to solution internally, and we have a lot of fun with it, which is also what counts. You can do anything you want on Sprinkler, right down to creating reports for a specific event around certain programs, around certain date ranges, make comparisons week per week, day per day, month per month, semester per semester, year on year, and it's an incredibly useful and strong tool. You have it for editorial as well, in the sense that you can put out content using Sprinkler, and it's marvelous. It's something I love.
Yeah, I'm super interested in learning more about Sprinkler. Actually, it keeps coming up in different places. So interesting to hear a firsthand account on it. Well, so as we're reaching the end of the interview, just wanted to give you the chance to share any final parting advice with other like European marketers.
Yeah, I would say that it is not easy generally to convince people of your point of view. And when you say that, I think I know what I'm doing, because there's always this top-down engagement, especially with communication and marketing, where it's like, do this, make this happen, and then it's like, where are the results, and show me the numbers, but the problem is the show me the numbers, but only comes at the end of this discussion. Why I think that what really has helped me as a content marketer and manager is to think of the show me the numbers bit in the beginning, wherein you say, guess what? I hear you. I know that you want to put this out. I know that you're thinking of doing this, but we've tried this before, and here are the numbers. Here's what happens when we try this way. Are you sure you want to go down this route? Are you sure this is what you want to do? We think this could be approached differently, because we don't want to see the same thing happening again. We want you to achieve your objectives. I think that what works as a content marketer is you're always putting yourself in the shoes of someone else, which demands a lot of empathy, but is not impossible. Whether it's your audience or whether it's your stakeholders internally or externally, it's something you need to do consistently, and it's not something you should be taking lightly. So that is one piece of advice that I'd have. Yeah.
That's a great piece of advice. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us and being on the podcast today.
Of course. Thanks so much, Shane. It was a pleasure being with you today.
Yeah, and thanks everybody for listening in. For more perspectives on the content marketing industry in Europe, check out thecontentmix.com and keep tuning into the podcast for daily interviews every weekday. See you next time. Bye.